Shout out to my teaching days. Thank you all so much for being here. We are going to go ahead and get started. There are some note cards in your seat. You might be sitting on them, as well as a pen that's to take notes or to write down any questions that you might have. If you have a question along the way, just just hold it up in the air and either Kaya or I or someone will pick it up and we'll answer all the questions at the end. So, Amber and Lyndon, thank you.
Very different heights. Good evening. My name is Amber Duke. I'm Executive Director of the ACLU of Kentucky. Welcome. Welcome, and thank you all so much for being here tonight. Of course, it's a summer evening. I know a lot of folks are on vacation. I've heard there are a couple of other community conversations that are happening, so I'm so glad that you all decided to be here. I want to thank our partners for this event. So they include the Black Leadership Action Coalition, or BLAC. Kentuckians for the Commonwealth are supporting this event. The Kentucky Alliance Against Racist and Political Repression this year has had several education sessions that they put together. And are sponsoring here tonight, and also the ACLU and the Urban League. Also, will the staff members of the ACLU of Kentucky and Urban League and volunteers raise their hands to be recognized? So much to put events like these together. We had folks that were handing out physical flyers to get folks here, folks posting on social media, so thank you for everyone that helped us gather. And, you know, part of the reason why we're here and why we're doing this now on a Tuesday night during the summer is because of the urgency of now. We cannot say strongly enough, Lynn and I were on a podcast together recently talking about this, that lives are truly hanging in the balance as we continue to just sort of coast and not take action on real reforms that include accountability.
Thank you, Amber, and thank you all again for being here. All I will say in terms of why we're here and why now, because as Amber said, lives are in the balance. What you're seeing with regard to the actions of our local police department are literally impacting people's lives. And we've known this for decades, and so this document, the community commitment, what was derived from the consent decree, is as important today as it has ever been. I will also say this about tonight. So we're going to do a lot of talking. You're going to hear from some folks who kind of give some history on where we've been and where we are now, and then we're going to have some discussion about what is going on and what we would like to see moving forward. And some of that may not be new information to you all. You know, there are a lot of familiar faces in this room, a lot of people part of organizations who have been part of this charge for the last several years. And that's okay. It is okay if we're in a room, if it feels like this is the choir, as people always say, preaching to the choir. But one of my favorite diversity facilitators, Dr. Jamie Washington, always says that sometimes the choir needs a tune-up. Right? Like we've got to rehearse, we've got to practice, and this is also what that is, right? Like, because there are things that we have to continue to do. Those of us who are champions for this and who want to see this progress and to see something real and tangible happen, we have to be prepared. We have to be able to go out and engage. Tonight is not just about hearing, sitting, and then going home and doing nothing. We are talking about what can we tangibly do next to move this city to the next natural step, and to the best step for the health, safety, and well-being of all of our citizens and neighbors. So thank you all for being here. And at this time, I think I'm turning it over to Ms. Felicia Newman, who is the Director for Justice and Policy Initiatives here at the Louisville Urban League. But thank you all.
Standing in place, so I know you're all recording, but I'll try to stand right here. Okay, so go back to the agenda. Okay, so here's our agenda today. I think Linda's already kind of gone over it. I just want to make sure you know what we're doing. And so I'm going to do this next part, the history of the consent decree. Okay? My name is Felicia Newman. I am the director for the Center for Justice and Policy Initiatives. Lyndon came up with that. I can't say it, but I just like to say director of policy. Okay, go on to our next slide. I can't stand it, I'm sorry. Okay. So this is a great timeline of where we have been since 2020. So follow me, if you will, through the recent history. So here we have the fateful day that started all of this, to get the federal government involved, was the killing of Breonna Taylor in her home by LMPD. We all know what happened with all of that. So people went to the streets. Some people in here, I know, some people on my staff went to the streets and protested and made their voices heard. They got the attention of the city, they got the attention of the federal government as well. So let me give you a little history about the Department of Justice. The Department of Justice was started around the time of Reconstruction, and it was started to protect the freedmen. Okay, it was started as a civil rights arm of the federal government. So the DOJ has something they call a pattern or practice investigation. They have done these under a state statute. It's not some policy that one president came up with. It is a statute in the federal code where they will investigate local jurisdictions for a pattern or practice of unconstitutional policing. They will find out what is going on in the particular community. They will use the data that the police department gives them. They will do all types of research. They had a very robust department full of seasoned lawyers, because let me tell you, I'm a lawyer as well, and one of the best jobs you could get at that time would be to work for the Department of Justice. It is the preeminent law firm in the United States. It trained all types of people. They became governors, they became senators, they became judges, and you would get a highly specialized training at that place. And it was a great place. Okay, so they do their investigation. It takes them a while. They use the data from LMPD. That's very important. They didn't go out and find anything. They used the data that LMPD already collected. Okay? So the data they already collected, they came up with LMPD was involved in unconstitutional policing. And they came out with that document. I remember I was in Washington that day when that came out and saw Merrick Garland here in Louisville giving the speech and saying, this is what's happening. All the people, the important people are on the dais. From March of 2023 to December of 2024, what happened between the federal government and the city was basically a mediation. I'm a certified mediator, and I used to mediate divorces. So I'm sure, that's my friend back there. Chris is like, I never wanted to do it, this she's doing it. So they mediated based off of this report, and they mediated between each other on what they were going to agree that Louisville was going to do, okay? That included changing some practices, having an independent monitor, having the judge oversee that process. So let's say that we didn't have the rest of this down here, let's forget that part. And we get to the point where they come up with an agreement and they file it with the court. The court is the place where the judge would say, okay, this is an agreement, I will accept it, I will sign it as an order of the court. Who all been in court? Y'all know what I'm just kidding. You've got to follow orders of the court. Because if you don't, you could get fined or jailed, right? You can get fined or jailed. Now, they can't fine a city, they can't jail a city, but they can fine a city. But that's usually not what happens. What happens is, if you make this agreement and the independent monitor says, oh, they're not doing X as a part of the agreement, and they can either work together, the independent monitor and the city say, how are we gonna resolve this? Or the federal government and them can work and say, how much time do you need to be better at this? Do you need 90 more days? Do you need 100 more days? Do you need 6 months to get better at this task that you're not completing? And they say yes, and you can file not a motion. You can file some type of agreement with the court to say, we have these issues, Your Honor, but we worked out our differences, and here's what we're gonna do. If that continues to happen and there's no way they can moderate their differences, then the judge is like, come to court, I'm gonna change it, I'm gonna tell you what to do. They're not gonna fine the city, they could, I guess, if they want it. No one ever does that. But they tell you, you got time to do this and this and this, and that is how the mechanism of accountability comes for the city who signed the agreement. So, well, we all know what happened in November of 2024. Ooh, they didn't even hear great, because that's a bad day in history. We all know what happened then. And this current administration does not believe in consent decrees. They do not believe, oh, here it is. They don't believe in consent decrees. That's a valid thing for that. You don't have to, everybody doesn't have to agree about everything. But they don't agree with that, how this law is executed. They might even, well, I won't say. So, he's in office, and 6 months later, 5 months later, they withdraw the case. Because here's what people don't understand. This was a lawsuit, right? The federal government sued the city of Louisville for unconstitutional policing. Okay? A civil lawsuit, not a criminal one. So after the civil lawsuit, the government, the DOJ is the petitioner, the plaintiff. Louisville Metro, LMPD, is the defendant. Maybe petitioner responded, I don't know how they do it in federal court. But one side against the other. The person who files a lawsuit can withdraw the lawsuit at any time that they want to. They decided they don't want to go forward anymore, they don't want to be bothered with it anymore, and so since the president can direct his attorney general to do whatever he wants, not technically, but that's how it turned out. They withdrew. So then with no case, there's no case in controversy, there's nothing for the judge to rule on, right? The case goes away, it's dismissed. Okay? That's how the case got dismissed. One side withdrew, there's no case anymore. So the judge didn't, I mean, you're not gonna keep a case on when there's no one to prosecute it, to move forward, so it gets dismissed. So that's what happens around December 2025. Now, earlier, I think you say 2026, don't you think? No? Oh, okay. Thank you. Okay. I'm ahead of myself. Okay, don't let me get ahead of myself. Okay, so in an effort to do something that was bold, and I'm gonna give credit where credit's due. I'm always gonna do that. It was bold and it was very courageous for the mayor to decide that he wanted to adopt the consent decree agreement into something else. Because there were 6 other states that had these same type of things going on, the same bad policing, and they were like, good riddance, we're not doing a damn thing. Okay? So the mayor decided he's gonna do this, something called a community commitment. And he hires an independent monitor. And I don't know how many people went to those meetings where they had the two face off. They put out a RFP, a request for proposals. They come back and they say, who do we like the best? And they pick ALIFA. I can't remember what this stands for. Somebody remind me.
Effective law enforcement for all.
Okay, effective law enforcement for all. So they hire these people. Now, here's the problem. It's nice that they hired them, but where is Alifa taking their disputes? Who's gonna say something about their dispute? If LMPD decides, I don't wanna follow the community commitment, who's gonna tell them, there's no mechanism for them. They work for the mayor. How you doing, girl? How you doing? So there's no oversight. There's no judge to go to say, oh, this is right, this is wrong, get your act together. They work for the mayor too. So I guess in this pocket, he's listening to this person, and in this pocket, he's listening to this person. It just doesn't make sense, right? But they've had some community meetings, and they've got a report that they're going to, I like this, you are here. They're gonna have a semi-annual report that they're coming out. They've had people come to different community events, they talk to people. I've heard they've gone to churches and all kinds of places and had very candid conversations with everyone. So it's good that they're doing that. It's wonderful that they're doing that. But what are we gonna do with that? What are we gonna do with this report? You can take a look at this report and say, oh, this is a nice report. Oh, I don't like what you said about me right there. I don't like that either. I'm gonna throw this report in my bottom drawer and never look at it again. So we have this issue where we have no mechanism for accountability, okay? I went over that point pretty fast, but I hope that it made sense to you, because I think overall in the public spaces that we've talked about this, a lot of this gets glossed over, and no one wants to tell you the intricate details of the law part. And that's one of my superpowers, to explain the law part, right? Make it easy for everyone to understand, not just us egghead lawyers, right? So make sure that if you have any questions about that history, write them down. Because right now I'm going to introduce Congo Najuna from the ACLU to talk about where we want to go.
Thank you all for being here. So where are we now? You can go to the next slide. Where we are is the community commitment. So what is it? Basically, it is a 204-page document that outlines how Metro government will implement police reform. I say it was signed by the mayor and the chief on May 21st, 2025. It was signed, but there's actually no date on the actual document. And that is the date that the mayor announced him that they were going to do this reform in this way. That this is Louisville's version of doing a consent decree, something that's, quite frankly, I don't know that it's been done on a city level outside of either a state kind of human rights commission or some other government agency where the city itself has done it. I think we are the first city to do this. Next slide, please. So, question may be, is it same, similar, different? What are those? It is very similar, I will say that, to the consent decree, but there are significant differences. Some of it that you already heard about with the enforcement mechanisms. So the consent decree had like 14 areas of reform for LMPD to work on, that they would have to become what they say substantially compliant to end up being considered constitutional in terms of policies, training, and then some data stuff. So like some of those with like use of force was something that they had to work on, residential search warrants, and individual with behavioral health disabilities. What you'll learn more about that specific section when Celine talks and connect that to some of the stuff that's been occurring now and recently. So all those are the same in this. They're numbered differently, but it is the same in terms of subject areas. Also, each thing in the consent decree laid out like your policy shall say X, Y, Z, and then at the end of that, every area had key objectives, which is defined in the consent decree and in the community commitment, pretty much the same, exactly the same. Those are specific measurable goals and measurements that LMPD have to show to say that they're substantially compliant, that they've met that. So like, less number of arrests or less search warrant, make sure your search warrants, are constitutional, think about that. So they have to like show some certain metrics, and if they do that, then they are considered compliant. And then at that point, the independent monitor is no longer like involved in that. And that point, LMPD becomes what's known as self-reporting, so that they just report, they no longer have to report to the independent monitor. And then we've already talked about, we have an independent monitor to oversee that. Big thing is, and as Felicia talked about, the community commitment is not an enforceable court order. It is just basically an agreement of the city. Like I said, it's signed by the mayor, signed by the chiefs, they're both part of the executive branch. So it's just the mayor saying, this is my promise to do police reform. But it has no teeth, it is a policy document. There's no judge, as we heard, to resolve disputes. Paragraph 50 of the community commitment lays out the dispute resolution process. So let's say like right now, they are looking at the use of force policy, ELIFA and LMPD. Let's say that ELIFA says this policy needs to read A, B, C, and the chief goes, I agree with B and C, but I don't agree with A. What happens? According to that paragraph, they're supposed to try to work it out informally, and then they can also go to mediation. But it's not like binding mediation. So at the end of the day, whatever LMPD decides wins. It has no teeth. Unlike had that resolution occurred under a federal consent decree, ELIFA and or LMPD could have gone to the judge and said, Judge, we think our policy is constitutional. We disagree with ELIFA, and the judge would go, I agree or disagree with you. So that is a key thing missing, which we really need. Then there's also what we talked about. So as part of the community commitment, the mayor created the Community Safety Commission, something that I sit on. We actually met today. I think one or two people in here probably watched it. I think it's live streamed. And that commission is charged with two things. It was initially created to oversee the Safe Louisville Plan, which is the violence reduction plan. But when the community commitment came to be, the mayor added on to that to oversee or to be the feedback loop for ELIFA and the community commitment. So what will happen is that in September, we will get the first report from the independent monitor that'll show us where we are in this process and their feedback. And they will report that to the public, they'll report that to the commission, and they will report. So like the next meeting, in fact, today we said, I don't the date's online, I don't remember it.
September.
Sometime in August, at that meeting, ELIFA will be the sole topic. They will report out, and the entire hour and a half will be about that report. So if there's ever a meeting for those of you that you either wanted to be at and or pay attention to, that would be the one. They are open to the public, and it's also on Metro TV. But again, the biggest thing there is we're just advisory only. So like we can't say, hey ELIFA or hey LMPD, we think you should do this. We think LMPD's right. No, we think ELIFA's right. We don't have any power on that level. And I'm now going to hand it over to Celine.
Hey y'all, my name is Celine Mutia Maria, she, her pronouns, and I'm a co-director at Black Leadership Action Coalition of Kentucky, also known as Black. And I want to start off with a little bit of a chant real quick before I go into my remarks. Can everybody repeat after me? Power to the people. Power to the people. One more time, a little bit louder. Power to the people. Power to the people. Let's just do 3 times to get it all together. Power to the people. Power to the people. Yeah, keep that energy up. So we've had a lot of comments today already about how we don't have a federal consent decree and that, you know, we don't have the judicial power that would come with that to hold the city accountable for doing the things that it says it's going to commit to doing. I'm going to talk about how a community organization is building power for the people so that we can have accountability and really be on the insides. And I'm going to specifically focus on Section 10 of the community commitment, which is a section that talks about how the city responds to people who have behavioral health issues or are in a mental health crisis. You all probably have heard that in just the last couple of months or so, we've had 2 people, 2 20-year-olds, who were having a mental health crisis, and they reached out for help, and unfortunately, they were killed by the police. this is exactly what the DOJ report told us happens often in the city and in many places across the country. In fact, when we look at some data from across the country, Black people are 3 times as likely as white people to be killed by law enforcement. From 2015 to 2020, 23% of shootings by police involved people with a mental health issue, and 67% of them were fatal. People with mental illness, generally across race, face mental health or face the police at a higher rate than their peers. So 4 times as likely for Black people. When it comes to Latinx people, they're 6 times more likely to be harmed by the police because of a behavioral health encounter. And when it comes to white people, non-Hispanic white people, they're 10 times as likely. So this is an issue that affects us across the board. But of course, as we saw in the DOJ report, it especially affects Black people, people with mental health issues, and imagine folks who are Black and also have mental health issues, that intersectionality. So the city has been asked by many, many people, what are you gonna do about this? Let's go to the next slide. We have been studying how the city responds to mental health issues since 2024. And what we've come to understand is that there's like this spectrum that exists, right? On one end of the spectrum is investing in police-only responses. And we have all just talked about what outcomes we see when that's the only strategy that the city has. In 2021, before the Greenberg administration, the city introduced a pilot program called Deflection, or the Crisis Call Diversion Program. That city started out in just 1 police division, and the 4th division, and now it's citywide, and it's 24/7. That is the people that should have responded when Caitlin called and when Martin called. Now that these incidents happened, Mayor Greenberg has been talking about introducing something that's called a co-response model. From what we researched and looked at, there's actually nothing currently stopping the city from sending out both mental health providers and police people. They have full control over how the program functions. For us, the big question mark we have is, what is the city doing about the opposite end of the spectrum? How are they investing in non-police, non-carceral responses to mental health crises? And what is possible there? And the thing that we know is that before the Greenberg administration, there was a program that was created by someone named Kalila Collins and a number of other community members, many of who are in this room right now, and the city ignored that program. They took bits and pieces of it that they liked, but when they saw the piece about the level of community engagement and community control that would be required for this program to be successful, they gutted it, they gave us deflection, and they told us to forget about dub delegates. So we are fighting to build the people power that is necessary to actually be able to answer that question. What do we do at the opposite end of the spectrum? And so we wanted to be able to present that to you all, invite you all to work with us, and thank our partners for the opportunity to present how are we addressing just one piece of the community commitment, and then how can we work together collectively to hold the city accountable for every piece of the community commitment. Thank you. Last minute, so I forgot about this one. But this is probably the most important slide because this is a direct quote from the community commitment, section 10, of where it talks about behavioral health responses. Louisville Metro will have the goals of providing an emergency response to people with behavioral health needs that includes the most behavioral health involved and least police involved response appropriate and consistent with public safety. This is what we have to hold them accountable to. What is the most behavioral health and least police response options, and how many of them exist, and how many of them can we bring to the city?
Thank you so much, Celine, and thanks for all the work that you're doing with the behavioral health, because that's definitely like one aspect of a lot of different facets that we need to attack. Not attack, but like, you know, go at this. I'm gonna take this. I know, I was like, what? Yikes. Okay, my name is Heather Ayer. I use she, her pronouns, and I'm the campaign coordinator at the ACLU of Kentucky.
My name is Kai Nishida, and I'm the Assistant Director of Policy at the Louisville RW.
And now is our time for our call to action. And thank you all so much for being here. I know we've said it a lot, but I really appreciate everyone taking time out of your busy Tuesday nights to be here. This is such an important issue that has been worked on by a lot of different people over many years, and we're still continuing to have to work on it and push. And I think that we already went through why this is important and why everyone needs to take action and why we're going to need the entire community of Louisville's input and work on this. I think that Amber and Lyndon said it best. I think that Celine definitely explained it really well, and it's just incredibly important that everyone in this room takes action. One of our kind of theories of change at the ACLU of Kentucky is the wall of sound, and that is trying to get any elected official or whoever the decision maker is, having them hear from as many people. Hello. Okay, so sorry. Thanks, Felicia. Having as many people as possible within each elected official's communities, their constituents, hear from them, have their colleagues talking about it, so they're hearing about it from everywhere, having organizations come up with new ideas and new ways to help people going through mental health crises, reading about this issue in the paper, and seeing it all over social media. So we want to create a wall around these decision makers where they're hearing about the consent decree, they're hearing about the community commitment, about how it needs to be enforceable. And so that's what we're going to be asking you all to do tonight. We have a menu of options available, different ways to get involved and take action. So if you all want to pull out your phones and scan this QR code, there's a whole list of activities you can do. You can meet with your Metro Council member, you can write an op-ed or a blog post, you can speak at a Metro Council meeting, you can go door-to-door canvassing, you can attend Metro Council meetings, you can share information on social media, and you can phone or text bank with us. Because not everyone wants to go door-to-door canvassing. It's very important, incredibly important. But not everyone wants to do that. Not everyone's able to do that. So we have a lot of different options. I also really want to uplift what Celine said, and if you want to help with what they're working on, please reach out to Celine, come up after we're finished, we're almost finished presenting, because that's also just as important as getting a consent decree or a version of the consent decree through Metro Council. So one more time, this is like, you have like 30 more seconds to take a little picture of the QR code. Is it working for everyone? Is anyone having issues?
It's working.
Thank you. Oh, I love when people talk to me. Yeah, you can go to the next slide. We'll also email this out if you weren't able to get that QR code, because we have another QR code. I feel like Oprah, I'm like, you get a QR code, you get a QR code. This is one to take direct action. This is where you will fill out a really easy form, and an email will go directly to your council member. And like Lyndon said at the beginning, we're here to take direct action. We've been taking direct action. A lot of organizations, a lot of community members have been doing this for years. And we're gonna keep doing it. So this is a way to send your council member an email about the consent decree right now. So if everyone can just take out their phones one more time. We all love screen time. Use your camera app, and you can easily fill out a form that will go directly to your council member. Okay. Now it is time for questions. Since we are doing well with time, we can just do it. You can either stand up, you can raise your hand. We're gonna have Felicia and Congo and Celine on deck to answer questions. And if anyone wants to chime in, you're welcome to do that. Okay, I have some questions. Also, if you don't want to stand up in front of the whole crowd, you can still hand in your index cards. The first one is, will they be, okay, so sorry. Oh, will they be something on all 14 reform topics? Reporting, thank you, so sorry. That's about the ALIFA report. Congo? Yeah.
No, so the way in which they're gonna be doing the work, if you read the implementation plan, they are doing some things first. So like use of force is in workflow A, and workflow and like behavioral health, which Celine talked about, actually isn't until workflow D. So what we're gonna get a report back on will be around the use of force policy, is what that will focus on. And then it'll also give us an update on like what's in the pipeline, so to speak. So like street enforcement's coming up. I just literally read this today. There's like another one that's like on deck.
And then how long is their contract?
It is a year-to-year contract, and if you read it, which is subject to, so like the mayor has to renew it, but then Metro Council has to allot money, and the contract literally reads that's contingent. So like the mayor could say, yes, I'm gonna hire you, and then Metro Council could go, we're not gonna allot money, and then that would be the end of it.
This is about deflection. So I don't know who would be the best, Celine. Does 7 counties have that contract? And if so, why is it them?
I don't know why. I'm assuming they applied to be able to run that program in a contract with the city, but yes, 7 counties. Yeah, there was an RFP. You want to add to that?
No, I won't answer.
Okay, yeah, usually when the city initiates some sort of community partnership, there is a request for proposal period or RFP period, where community groups are able to apply for that contract, and then they're able to, initiate it if selected. Kind of like the independent monitor was selected. So I assume that's how 7 counties got the contract, and they are still running the program. And the people who work for the deflection program, they are actually like everyday people who get trained on how to respond to folks who are in mental health crises. It doesn't require that you have a master's in therapy or your license. You can be people just like us who can be trained how to do that.
Can I add real quick? So, to my knowledge, I don't think there was an RFP for the original. And I only say that because under Path 4, we actually had a call with then Metro Council President Dave James and Mayor Fisher, and they told a group of leaders about the program that it was happening, and that 7 counties had simply been selected. So if there was an RFP, to my knowledge, I don't know that it happened. But what I will say this, to credit about 7 counties, is we have talked to them, we have talked to them from the very beginning. They have had lots of concerns about how deflection is run and how it has been implemented from the very beginning. And so they have tried to voice those concerns to the administration from the very start.
Yeah, they've been great as far as desiring evolution in the program, wanting to work with community. So far, I think that's a conversation to have with the city, but I think 7 counties, from what we've heard and what we've talked to them about, is really on board with imagining how to improve how we respond to mental health crises.
And Celine, one more question, or at least, maybe not just one more. How many mental health professionals are on staff with the deflection team, and is that enough?
Jean Romano is the person to speak with at 7 counties. She runs the program. I don't know how many people, but it's enough people to where they're able to run the program 24/7 across the entire city. So, Nancy.
My understanding is that U of L did the study on the deflection model, and they're the ones who came back with a recommendation for 7 counties. So I think Lyndon is correct. There was no RFP, and U of L was very intricately involved in this entire process from the beginning and how it came to be the way that it is.
Thank you. Are there any more mental health / like deflection related questions right now?
If we have deflection, why are we not focusing on making it better versus creating something new, or asking the city to invest in something new, like not new, but something like Dove Delegates? Why do we want both?
Great question. From what we've seen, there are some concerns around policy when it comes to deflection. So for example, the way the program works is that if I am having a mental health crisis, and Tala calls them for me. Because Tala called, and she's a third-party caller, it is not eligible for deflection. Police get sent out if a third-party person calls, or if the person in crisis is not able to consent to having deflection come out. Anyone who's ever had a crisis knows how difficult it can be to be making the most rational decisions for yourself to get yourself to safety. So even just that particular piece of policy limits so many calls from being able to be eligible for deflection. And so if those things are not changed, then we need other options to where it does not require a third-party caller or a first-person caller. You know, that we need to have like flexibility around what is eligible for deflection versus what may not be.
A third party can call, but a third party can call. It's not about consent, but there are certain things based on not 7 counties, but the contract that would get it thrown out because it's everyday people and not professionals, that they're crisis counselors. So if they call and say they have a weapon, or the process of suicide has started, or they're hurting themselves or others actively, that gets thrown out for deflection. So what often happens is people want deflection to come faster, so sometimes they'll even exaggerate the situation or say that some things already started and then it automatically gets thrown out of deflection. Deflection can't choose their own calls because it's going through 911 operating system. So the 911 operator is the individual deciding if it's deflection or LMPD or co-response or EMS first, on the first responder. But a third party, you can call deflection or 988 on the behalf of anyone.
And I think this, thank you for that. And who do you work for?
7 counties.
That's what I was gonna say. That's important because this is from the source, so that's.
And I think this just shows how little community education exists, right? About how does it work, what counts, what doesn't count. Maybe things have changed since last year, since earlier this year even. And so, unfortunately, with the Greenberg administration, when Dove delegates told them this is gonna require an extensive amount of community education and involvement and control, they backed out of that. And now we see the results, what happens with a large portion of our community not really understanding how things work.
And I can come, if anyone wants more information for their individuals, organizations, I'm the director of community impact at 7 counties, and I can come and speak to your community or your organization about the details of 911 versus deflection versus 988 versus mobile response and try to make sense of that.
Yeah, thank you to 7 counties for y'all's willingness to do that. And I think if we can get Greenberg on the same page, that administration, then our city will be better for it.
Thank you, Celine. That was a lot of questions going at Celine, and that was great. I'm gonna do one more of these, and then I'll go to you, April, and we can go back and forth. One question is, how can children support this work? Which I think is a really nice question to ask after a lot of, it's a heavy topic in general, just this entire presentation, and then with the behavioral health and mental health support. So I don't have one definite answer on this. I think there are a lot of different ways children can support. I think that this is going to require us to get even more creative than we've already been in getting the consent decree passed, which means getting people who maybe cannot vote yet involved. And I think it also depends on how old the children are. Maybe we could have different options for different ages. Taylor, you want to answer, or do you want the?
Are also constituents, so they can also participate in the call to action. They could email their representatives, write op-ed. There are options that they can do to make their voices heard.
Play Cousins Collective is a great organization that often is able to translate quote unquote adult issues into how do you talk about that with young people. So I would really recommend them too.
Okay. I didn't want to listen. Oh, sorry.
Oh, yeah, I'm fine. Hey, y'all. So at Black, we don't do a lot of youth-specific organizing. We recognize that that's a gap in our work around leadership development, civic engagement, base building. We recognize that as a gap. However, recently we've been having conversations around community violence. And a lot of the conversations around community violence ends up centering youth, specifically like 13 to 25-ish. So just recently we've been having these conversations, and in that, we, alongside some of the youth, developed community safety plans. And so I say all of that to say, a point that I think the youth can get involved is developing out what they would like to see and really being in the offense part of what we need to build, the alternatives that we need to build. I think the youth can really play a role in that, and I often see them out of these conversations, but these were the youth who came to that space were the youth who said, this is how I can recognize if there's violence about to happen in my neighborhood. This is how I would stop a fight if it's happening around me. These are the things that I pay attention to know that if I'm in a safe space or not. This is how I want the adults around me to treat me and make me feel cared for and feel safe. And those are some of the entry points I think we could take to getting the youth involved and taking action.
My question is for Congo. It is specifically about Alifa. You have mentioned that Metro Council will approve to allocate funds or not. I want to know if you can share with us that amount as it relates to tax dollars.
As it relates to what?
Tax dollars. Like, how much money is the government paying Alifa to do what they do?
I'm probably gonna get this. I think it's
If you don't know, I do.
$750,000.
I think, yeah.
And they're at about $325,000 right now.
I think which is half of what it was, yeah, so I was looking over that. It's exactly half of what we would have been paying if the DOJ. So they cut that, in half.
And that's per year.
Yeah, per year, yeah.
I just want to add the point that Kamau just made in terms of the reduction, that's significant. And because what that means is that is less money for Alifa to investigate, to research, to interface with community, to be on the ground, to be around, like all the things that we want them to do to actually make sure that they are holding LMPD and others accountable. That requires money. It requires a lot for them to do that. And so when you start by cutting that budget in half, you are significantly impacting just how responsive and effective they can be. And so we'll see what they're able to do with the money that they had, but just understand that cut was a big deal, and many of us actually spoke out about that when it happened.
Does that mean half of what the monitor would cost?
Yes,
Okay.
yes.
Is when when you were speaking on, you said eventually the police will self-report. I was trying to wonder, why does that transition take place?
Well, because like when you have a consent decree, that the whole point is to get the police department to be constitutional and act constitutionally, that they are doing that themselves. A consent decree is never meant to be permanent. So the point is to say that your policies are in line with the Constitution, the way you train on it's within Constitution, and then your kind of feedback loop is to make sure like, okay, we're always checking our policies, we're checking our training policies, and if they're doing that right and doing it right for a sufficient time, they become what's known as substantially compliant, which is just a legal term to say you're doing it right. And if you're doing it right, I don't need to check on that anymore. That is now totally your responsibility.
Okay, and then the other question I had was how you were talking about what they're presenting as a policy that has no teeth is not enforceable. Is this gearing towards getting something that's enforceable?
Yes. Kind of the central piece of why we are here today is to give the consent decree teeth. And the only way to do that, in our opinion, is to get it adopted by Metro Council. That's why you saw the QR code to call, text, semi-harass your council member to say that this is important to us, and you all have the power to adopt it into law. They are the closest to the people, and they have the power. That is why you are here. We want these reforms to make sure it happens and to make sure there is an independent party that can say, hey, Alifa LMPD, you all are not getting along. Well, guess what? Metro Council is gonna oversee that to say, well, we agree with LMPD, or no, we agree with Alifa. Someone needs to do that, and that's why we're here, to make sure the community commitment, the behavioral health council stuff gets done and done right.
Okay, so I'm not sure who wants to answer this one, maybe Felicia, but the question is, was the lawsuit dismissed with prejudice? If not, can there be grounds for a refile of the lawsuit since LPD and a government agency entered into an agreement?
So that's actually a good question. So it was dismissed with prejudice, but that doesn't mean that the next president or whoever is in charge can't do another investigation, come up with the same results, and file a new lawsuit. Okay? So it's not totally over, right? I'm trying to be positive, But right now, the case that, with the current case number, you know, United States of America versus Louisville and LMPD, it is done. It cannot come back.
Double jeopardy.
Right there. So I had a question about the $750,000. Is that an annual contract? And is that do we know what, are they asking for the same as this project that's going to be passed before the end of the month?
Yeah, that amount is written, the amount is in the consent, is in the community commitment, just like it was in the consent decree. It is it's set. Yeah.
So my question is back to the lawsuit. So if you know, the US v. LMPD is done and over with, but can't, as community members and affected members of the community, can't we also file a lawsuit against LMPD?
This is a good question. I love it because when I was answering the phone for my law practice, people always ask me this kind of thing. So I have to get real down in the weeds with the law. When you have a case in controversy, I hit Lyndon in the face and break his glasses. Never do that. There is somebody to prosecute me, and there's okay? The city has standing, well, the prosecutor's office has standing to go after me because I'm a defendant, I've hurt somebody, right? In a civil case, same thing. If I push Lyndon down the steps, and I'm just kidding, and I break his legs, I'm messing. And he comes after me in a civil suit, he has standing to sue me. But let's say Amber witnessed it and she fainted and bumped her head, she can't sue me. Like, sorry, Amber. You know what I'm saying? So there has to be a standing element. Do you have the right to bring the lawsuit? And unfortunately, a lot of times, individuals in a city do not have standing against the police just for amorphous policy decisions. You know, Martin's family, Kayla's family are definitely suing the city. They definitely have standing to go after the police department and the city because they have standing because they were actually harmed. Unless you have actual harm, you can't do a lawsuit. Amber.
I was just going to quickly add that the ACLU of Kentucky did file an amicus brief or a friend of the court brief when this was before the judge, and we filed that on behalf of, I think, 14 organizations who were signed on to it representing individuals in the community. So that was our attempt to get some of the community voice as a part of that process to say this is why this is important and community folks are very concerned about it.
Let me explain what an amicus brief is. Yes. Right. So an amicus brief is usually filed by an organization that would not have standing otherwise to file a lawsuit. So they are, well, amicus brief is friend of the court? Yeah, like I'm asking my friend back here, you remember that from law school? Okay, so they file a brief with legal arguments and different people, and like you said, with community, and they say, look at this also. Consider this also when you are trying to make your decision, Judge. So a lot of organizations, ACLU, Legal Defense Fund, file amicus briefs for the judge to consider so they can make the better decision. Doesn't have any standing other than to help persuade the judge to take a look at whatever the amicus brief is advocating, though.
I wanted to go back to the LIFA report in the deflection program. Congo, can you tell us if the members of the commission have the authority or power to ask ALIFA to change the order by which that they're reporting on the issues, if the deflection piece is something that people are really interested in?
No, we do not have that power. So ALIFA and LMPD work on, there's an implementation plan and a workflow, and they come up with that. Now, they can agree to change that. So like, because of events on the ground, if someone say, hey, we think it's more important now to focus on the behavioral health section, and LMPD agrees, then that workflow can change, but we don't have any authority. We can make the suggestion, but we don't have any authority to make it happen.
Can you make the suggestion? The other question is for Black. The conversation that we were having about the deflection program, are you all tracking which pieces of this conversation are policy related to the community commitment, and how much of this is how 7 counties runs the program?
Yes, we're having conversations with both 7 counties, and kind of to piggyback on what Kungu just brought up, we went to the mental health subcommittee. So the Community Safety Commission has 4 different subcommittees. One of them is the mental health subcommittee. They had a meeting on May 13th. We went to that meeting to see what the conversation was, because we were told that would be the body of people making decisions on what happens with deflection. When we got to that meeting, those people were told, you all actually are not touching anything related to deflection. So that created a question for us, like, if the mental health subcommittee of the Community Safety Commission is not working on deflection, who is? We were told there's another body of people mentioned in the community commitment called the Behavioral Health Coordination and Oversight Council. They had a separate meeting, and at first I was told that meeting was not public, and then the next thing you know, we were asked to join that council. So that's a whole other thing that we're tracking. And those meetings happen every other month, and they talk about policies. So that will be the body of people that are working on deflection. The next policy committee meeting for that council is next Thursday. And so then it's just, things are moving very slowly, and incidences like Caitlin and Martin will continue to happen. So that's another thing we have that we're watching and clocking, is like, do we have to wait every other month before we get progress on what's happening? So we're talking to both 7 counties and the city structures that have been created to address this.
Okay, I'm not sure who wants to answer this one, but the question is there anything preventing LMPD ALIFA from moving the behavioral reforms up to be evaluated after use of force reforms?
I think I just answered that. That's a yes.
Did you? Okay.
So we should be asking the commission, we should be asking our council people, and also Humphrey to push that.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely a sense of urgency, and they will only feel that sense of urgency if community members are placing that on them. Yeah. To be honest, the monitor actually didn't even know that there was a behavioral health council and oversight meeting happening. And so there's clearly a lack of communication happening between the city and the independent monitor. And so how do we stand by the independent monitor to say, like, you should be getting this information, and why is the city not doing its part to get you that information? And they're only here like once a quarter. And it speaks to what Lyndon said, if their budget's been cut in half, like, they're limited in how they can show up in the community.
Congo, I don't know if you already did, but if not, can you explain the relationship between the CSC and ALIFA?
did some Doritos.
I think I kind of did. And I should also, another member of the Community Safety Commission is here, Joni Jenkins, who works in Morgan McGarvey's office, so I wanted to acknowledge that.
You want to answer the question?
So the relationship, the relationship is spelled out in the community commitment that ALIFA will report to us. So like the reports, they'll also be public. Like we're not getting like super secret information or anything. Basically the report, like the semi-annual report, they'll come, it'll be on the website, public will get it, and then they'll come report to that. And then we'll be able to like engage with that report and ask questions and make inquiries.
Okay, this is my last question. So that meeting is open to the public where community members can come out. You know where I'm going with this. Why can't we ask questions?
I think that's a question for Misty Wright and Chan Kemper, who run that commission.
You're right, you're right.
Patrick?
When we say ALIFA, who is that? How many people is that? And do we like them?
Actually, ALIFA is an organization has done this type of work all over the country. They're a nonprofit.
Yes.
They're a nonprofit. They're not nonprofit, and profit is obviously a tax designation, but they're not trying to make money. That is not their goal. They have a mission. They have a mission. So they're trying to complete their mission, and they're not trying to bill as much as they can or do as much as they can. From what I see, I feel as if they're committed. I feel like they want to do a good job. That's why they went out for it. So I'm hopeful that they're going to be a good community stakeholder in all of this and help us make these changes. So, Patrick, did you want to know what it stood for too?
No, he wanted to know
where they're from. Where are they from?
Cambridge.
Yeah.
No, so they're actually from all over. So what's a little different about ALIFA is they kind of use like a consortium model whereby they use facilitators and practitioners really from all over the country. So one of the ones, I think there are 6 who were assigned to Louisville. One is from Massachusetts, another was from Maryland. They've got somebody else who's out west. And so these are individuals from all over the country who have various expertise. For instance, one of them used to work for the ACLU in the Northeast. Another is a former police officer. Somebody's a lawyer. So lots of different people with lots of different expertise to bring to bear on this problem. I think somebody asked, like, do we like them? So a few of us have had the opportunity to meet them. And I'll say, like, from the Urban League, we met with them one time. I will tell you though, I came away very impressed from that meeting. They were honest, and stand up so y'all aren't looking at the back of my head, I'm sorry. The thing that I appreciated most about them, and I told them this, I said, you did not come in here and gaslight us. They did not come in and say, hey, it's not as bad as y'all think. Hey, this isn't, you may not understand fully what's going on here. They were very honest and direct and said, no, there are problems, there are issues, and we're here to help figure those things out. And so far, in the relationship, and I don't know, Amber, if you want to say anything about y'all's meeting, but so far, at least from what I can tell, there are reasons to be encouraged by them. But back to why we're here, it doesn't matter how good they are, if there's nothing, if what they say isn't going to be taken seriously or isn't going to be implemented and all of that. They could be the best thing since sliced bread, but if we can't guarantee that whatever they recommend or what they say is going to be held up, then that's the problem. And so that is why all of this matters.
I think I heard right that deflection's already happening, right? Are we keeping track of what cases, like how many times has it happened, what's the outcome of all those cases? Is that something we can use in
Yeah, so until June 2022, U of L was looking at the data, providing reports and updates on what was happening publicly. That contract ended and now 7 counties is keeping up with all the data. I don't know how it's shared or if it's shared with the public right now, but I think there are conversations we can have to like talk about how we can get access to information. And I know that they said one thing they have to be mindful of is just like sensitive, medical, mental health information and what can and cannot be shared. But yeah, there is a way for us to request that. I just don't know what that looks like.
And they actually shared that today at the Community Safety Commission. Deputy Chief Emily McKinley actually reported that she had actually met with Gene Romano about the crisis center, but then she went through all of her 2025, I believe, data about all the 911 calls and how they were deflected, what calls were deflected, what calls went to CIT, the LMPD. So she ran through all that data, and someone had brought up about, like maybe potentially putting that on their website. So that data is available, and literally she ran through all like the percentages of calls that are deflected.
And I think one thing to note, because we often think about accessibility, a lot of these meetings are happening from 9 to 5, when many people are at work or, pulled in many other capacities. And where the meetings happen, the last mental health subcommittee meeting happened at the public defender's office. I told them, if I didn't have money to pay for parking, I might not be able to attend these meetings. So they can have as many meetings as they want, but are they actually accessible to the public who can get to the information?
I just wanted to say this on Black's behalf that no matter what direction we go in, we're going to have to do some really deep, it's going to have to require a lot of people power. And so it's going to require us to double down on them, make several calls, and I'm going to say this because I'm going to assume everyone is here because we want to, we want Kentucky, Louisville to change and be better than it is right now. We're going to have to bully our elected officials. We got them in office. We're going to have to bully them to get them to do what we know is best and safest for the people who we take care of. And so I want to invite my folks into an opportunity for us to organize around these things. And so that's just the last thing I wanted to say.
I just want to respond and really appreciate this, the action focus. But I have a real concern about just focusing on deflection and not going right to co-responders, because part of the problem here is the police that goes along need psychological screening.
Yep.
And I hope we can bring that in really early or soon.
I kind of want to think back to what you said, I don't know if they're going to create programs, do something monthly for the police department to do not necessarily a screening, but how people have to do senior work, they have to go through a training to make sure that they qualify for it or understand the deal with people that have mental disabilities and stuff like that. Are they going to create programs for the police department to understand when they're dealing with somebody that has a mental disability, before they, create, lock them up or whatever the case is?
They already have those programs. They're called, every police recruit goes through CIT training. I think it's crisis intervention training. It's required as part of their recruitment process. And so every single officer technically has been trained on these things. But even when we look at the Caitlin Hall situation, when we were at the press conference, there were several mental health professionals who work inpatient, and they talked about how de-escalation is possible. They encounter issues where people have what might be considered a weapon. So is a pencil a weapon? To a police officer, it is. To a mental health professional, it's not. So how they handle those situations are very different because they're coming at it from a different lens. So that training already exists, and unfortunately it's shown that that's not enough. And so what else can we introduce into our ecosystem so we have more options?
I got asked by LKY or WDRB about what else can be done. And when I was a prosecutor, they had a crisis intervention team and they had more specialized officers, and those people would go out. It wouldn't just be a patrol person, with the regular 40 hours at the beginning that they took, 2 or 3 years ago. It would be special officers. So I think that's one of the things that LMPD should probably bring back, is that people should have a specialized unit. Have a specialized unit for everything. They got a unit for old people, they got a unit for children, they got a unit for narcotics, homicide, financial crimes. They have a specialized unit for everything, and they can have a specialized unit for this. Even if they don't use any social workers or community members.
So real quick, according to Alifa, there is a specialized unit for behavioral health. They don't get a lot of interest from officers who want to do it.
No, okay, yeah, I get what you're saying, but a lot of us have jobs and there's parts of it we don't want to do. So I think that's a cop-out.
I mean, I think police are saying we don't know. Police are saying we cannot handle these things on our own. They're literally saying it. I think we have to go to the administration and ask how are you responding to
This is gonna be our last question. This is gonna be our last question? Yeah. This is gonna be the last question.
Great, because it's not a question. It's a call to action.
No, it's not.
We spend a lot of time talking about the deflection, which is like a remedy to one of the reforms. There's 14 different reforms, and we heard from staff from Black who are really holding that. I challenge other groups in this room to pick up one of the reforms and dig in and report back to community. I don't work for a nonprofit or a group, so that's not really my work. I'll come to a meeting if you all organize it, but we need other people to take some leadership on owning the different parts of the community commitment. So thank you, Black, for holding that piece. We need some other people to step up to hold the others. The other point is call your Metro Council reps. You can email them, call them, and ask for a callback. The best times to call them, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday after 1 o'clock. Usually they're not even before that, or the staff is, but they'll call you back. Leave a message and ask for a callback.
And we can help you with that. And I'm sure KFTC's in the room. I know they support people with that, so there's a lot of work. You don't have to do it by yourself.
So please give it up for Heather, Kaya, and all of our for ACLU and the league and really everybody who helped put this together, our partners, Black KFTC, and the Alliance, and for all the support that you all had coming into this and to making this a success for the event. And again, this is just one more step along the way on the road to us getting the police department that we deserve as a community. So you have been given several steps and opportunities for action, right? Because I don't want to be without you understanding there's stuff for you to do. And so you had the link, the QR code to where you can email your Metro Council members today. Thank you, ACLU, for setting that up. It actually goes to all of the Metro Council members. You really have to figure out who yours is. It goes to all of them. There is the link to take action, to tell us what you want to do. If you want to go to Metro Council, if you want to canvass or do whatever. All of those are now available to you. And the one last thing that I'll leave you with is that we at the Urban League, one of the things we are pushing this year, we launched what's called the Power Shift campaign. And it is a campaign to turn out the vote. And that is important because all of these things, hopefully, one of the things they cut through tonight is everything we talked about is tied to a vote. It is tied to an elected official who was in office, who made a decision to do something, to not do something, whether that is at the federal level, and what happened with the DOJ pulling out to begin with, whether that is at the local level with the what the mayor has chosen to do, or what the previous administration chose to do and how they set up the deflection program. All of these things are tied to a vote. If we are going to get the community commitment codified into law, the ordinance, That is going to come down to the Metro Council members who are sitting there. They all are voted in. All of this, every single piece of this, is tied to a vote. And to make it just crystal clear, Martin and Caitlin's life is tied to a vote. What happened to them is directly tied to who is in office. And so I would invite you all to join with us. It is a nonpartisan power shift campaign that really talks about how we turn people out. And we are focused specifically on turnout. During the primary, 440,000 registered voters in Jefferson County did not vote. We had races that were decided by 5 votes. Races decided by a couple hundred votes. Races decided by maybe 1,000 votes. 440,000 people did not turn out to the polls in the primary. We have to turn people out. People have to show up. And so we're asking people to pledge to vote. And what that is a commitment to vote. And it's not just something that just sits there. What happens at that point is we check in on it. We make sure that you're registered, that you know where you're voting, that you know how to complete a ballot or how to get your sample ballot. And if there are any things that change to voting between now and November, we're gonna make sure that you're informed and how to do that. And so as an individual, everybody can sign up and can pledge to vote with us at the Urban League. If there are organizations who want to participate, we have a Souls to the Polls initiative where groups can sign up. We're doing friendly competitions to see how many people each organization can get to pledge to vote. But you can sign up right there. But that is just your one last call to action. You can certainly go to lul.org/vote to be able to sign up there. We had some flyers and QR codes available there, but please, please, please make it your mission to not just go vote yourself, but to turn out everybody around you. Thank you all for being here. Hope you have a safe and wonderful evening, and we'll see you soon.
Hey y'all, I'm Atticus Scott, former Kentucky State Representative, and you're joining me today on State Lunch Nights.
We will continue to provide updates as we have more information.
And you're joining me today on State Lunch Nights.